Oh, Jamie, we're recording.
Yeah.
Yeah. On that happy note, we should start the show. Gentlemen, well, first of all, before I even go to the whiskey, Sam, it's great to have you with us. And our regular viewers will notice that we're missing Dean Mischewski, my co-host. He's not here. So we've got a competent placeholder.
Yeah, less fit.
Yeah.
I feel like Dean kind of might own that world.
Yeah, he is. He's uber fit.
Yeah.
We used to play soccer together. I mean, he's one of the first to do CrossFit, and he would every day. He would it's just amazing. He would follow the official requirements.
How did you know that he did CrossFit? Did he tell you?
No, he didn't really make it that big deal. He had a whole homemade gym and everything.
That's normally what they do, right? Like if you're vegan or do CrossFit, that's the very first thing that you will know about someone is that they are vegan. Or
I saw that. I saw a kid on a TV show. We were talking about this the other night, Australian current affairs show.
Yeah.
And this kid rings in one morning to tell a joke, and he says, "What do you get if a busload of vegans and a busload of vegetarians goes off a cliff in New South Wales?" And they said, "What?" And he goes, "A good outcome for Australia."
That's it.
But yeah, we are here. So Jamie, you're a placeholder, but you're not really. You're I'm
good with that. I'm here for the ladies to look at my beard, really.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
We're in the Waikato, so you're looking Amish, bro. That's
That'll
good.
do it.
Actually, it does look a lot bigger on camera. It's sort of unusual, but yeah. I had somebody ask me once, like they were quite impressed with how I dyed my beard. They sort of made the comment that I did that really well.
It's just a hard life that does it to you, right? It's just.
Did that really happen though, or did you just imagine someone coming up to you and saying, "Hey, I'm really impressed by how you dye
this guy said, he goes, I really like how you've coloured your beard.
Yeah.
A guy said it. Okay.
A punishing life has coloured it for me. Is what you said.
Yeah.
And next to Jamie, we have Sam. It's great to have you with us, Sam.
Yeah, thanks. Great to be
here.
And
we're sitting in your distillery.
Yeah, you are. Yep.
You're wearing the shirt, you're branded and everything.
Yep,
Fen and Field Distillery.
Fen and Field Distillery.
But we're going to share a whiskey tonight, and then I'm going to ask you a little bit about your story. Tonight we are going to be cracking open the Kilkerran Heavily Peated. It's a Campbelltown classic. I'm petrified about dropping this on the concrete floor.
Yeah, it won't survive.
I've been trying in the billet for a while online to get myself a bottle of one of these, or any of them actually.
A billet, did you say?
So the whiskey suppliers here in New Zealand, because Campbelltown doesn't produce as much at the moment. There's a few more distilleries opening there apparently.
Right.
Because they were the big whiskey place. And then was it the 80s when the crash hit and everything sort of collapsed and Campbelltown lost a lot?
Was that when Absolute started being better at marketing, and no one wanted to drink brown spirit because it was your grandfather's spirit. And,
that's exactly
and
it.
Absolute and Smirnoff and just absolutely dominated in the 80s. Yeah.
Where's Campbelltown?
It's one of the whiskey regions in Scotland, and it's known for what they call the Campbelltown funk, actually.
Yeah.
Industrial kind of place. It was the sort of, I don't know how true that is. It's certainly the local legend anyway, that it is the hub of Scotch whiskey, but maybe that's there.
Yeah, I think every region would probably dispute that.
Yeah, of course they would. Speyside says it's us.
Yeah, but it's definitely got Campbelltown funk. I've had a couple of them, and
So this is a Campbelltown whiskey, Kilkerran Heavily Peated, 59.2% ABV,
nice.
And this, as I said, I had to go on the billet because they only produce so much of it each year, and finally I won the billet, which means I get the privilege of buying it. It's not like you win anything. So grab a glass, gentlemen, and we'll. Oh gosh, that smells good already. Thank you. And I'll do myself last because that would be rude, wouldn't it? But we'll start with you, Sam. Oh, listen to that. There you go, my friend.
Wonderful.
Jamie, this is you. How's that?
That's great.
And already I can smell the nose on that, and I haven't even put my nose into a glass. Mm-hmm. So I've been saving this just for this episode.
Right.
Because, Sam, we are in your distillery. Fen and Field.
Yeah, such as it is. Wow.
It's quite amazing actually to be here. So
Yeah. No, I'm happy to be here myself.
We've got the still behind us.
Right.
Just one at the moment?
Yeah, just one at the moment. At the moment, our only products are gin anyway. So we will this year go and do a vodka as well. But the still will run in a few configurations, but mainly it's just used for stripping the wash and then doing the spirit run with the reflux column. Yeah. And that will produce a spirit which is sort of approaching azeotrope. Yeah. So that's good enough for making vodka and gin. Yeah. Mm.
That's your entry point, right? Is that because you've got plans for the future, haven't you?
Yeah. So I guess I'm lucky is I love all spirits and I'd love to do a bit of everything. But whiskey is definitely my first love, and I love the history of it. Love the story of whiskey. So whiskey there will definitely be barrels of whiskey going down. Yeah, awesome. For sure. It's just a matter of I guess accumulating the resources so that I can do that. Yeah.
So you've mentioned the whiskey story, because the story is part of the whole whiskey experience.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. I think you could go back to many points in the whiskey history where it's that story that has saved the whole industry. Yeah. And I think even going forward, that's still going to be the case. I mean, I think more and more now people are interested in where their food comes from, where their spirits come from, their beer. There's the whole local movement, but also the whole quality traditional craft movement, which is I don't think that's going away.
No, and whiskey has a great story, right? It has, the history of it, and the sense of, you're right, just the artisanship of what this is. Jamie, have you tried this yet, by the way?
I did just take a sip of it. Yeah.
What do you think?
In my very professional opinion of having tasted whiskey for 4.5 months, a little longer, but no, it's a nice. It's definitely 59%. You said 59, didn't you?
Yep, 59.2. Oh, that's nice. It's got that funk. It has too, hasn't it?
I think there's a lot of flavour hiding in that proof, to be honest. It probably
put a bit of water in, dip your finger in your water glass, and
probably
do
be
that,
good
Jamie.
to open that up a bit.
Yeah. So for those who don't know who are watching, a bit of water in your whiskey opens up the alcohol distillate. So you drop a bit in, you just let it swirl it around for a little bit, and it really opens up the flavour of what you're tasting. So
yeah,
I don't mind that though. Actually, that's here we go. We're sheep dipping it. There we go. I'll have a little bit of that actually too, Sam. Let's try this. There we go. Jamie, do you want some?
Is it water or?
No, this is not. Yeah, we're not adding gin. It's water.
Yeah,
I don't think I'd be invited back if it was doing that.
Angry throwing of glasses across the concrete floor. So Sam, your gin doesn't have a story, or does have a story? Can it have a story?
Oh, absolutely, gin can have a story.
Yeah.
So the traditional way of making ethanol, or making spirits, for every category of spirits, I think that's the whole story behind it, right? So my gin is made from wheat from the South Island. So, we've been turning wheat into alcohol for a very, very long time. Yeah. Probably 400 years if we go back as far as, say, farmers who would distill their own, in community stills and such. We probably have at least 200 years worth of history in a commercial sense, where you have recognised brands and standardised quality and things like that. So, the story of Fen and Field gin is I think it's part of that real long rich tradition of milling grain. Okay, the equipment might have changed a little bit, but if you look behind me, the equipment hasn't changed much. No. I mean, we've got, instead of milling the grain with like a giant rock or something, I've got a motor on my mill, but it's still a stone which is breaking the grain up. Yeah. And then it's, we're adding hot water to the malted grain. We're letting the natural enzymes convert the starch into sugar. and then we ferment that, and that has not changed for all those hundreds of years. And so I'm part of that tradition.
Were you like, what possessed you to want to do that? Because it's one thing to say, oh, like I really love whiskey. It's another step to go, I will produce my own spirit and really give myself to the craft.
It's just because I love it.
Okay.
Like really, if the focus was money, I would definitely have gone a different route. So in order to make a bottle of gin or a batch of gin, it's going to take me a month, and that includes the milling, the mashing, and then the fermentation, which takes 4 days. Then you've got to strip the wash, and then you've got to refine the spirit to the point where you can actually use it in a gin. That all takes time, and that costs money. The ingredients are expensive, so I pay the penalty there. But the end product, I think, has character and it has a story. And so if I was more focused on the money, I would probably I'd buy my ethanol in.
Because is this the closet vegan coming out in you? Because this would be one of the few vegan friendly beverages in New Zealand, perhaps.
Well, I mean, probably by volume. Yeah, but I mean, I guess whiskey's vegan. Anything made from any ethanol with a grain substrate is vegan. Sugarcane, so rum's vegan. All those things are vegan. What's not vegan, obviously, is the whey ethanol is not vegan, and whey ethanol is probably in New Zealand anyway. It is the predominantly most available.
So tell us that story, because people are probably listening and they're going, What's whey ethanol? What was doing?
Well, so we do. We have a huge dairy industry in New Zealand, and Fonterra, our biggest processor of milk. When they make cheese, they are left with a whey. It's deproteinized whey, so it's all the protein is taken out, fat's removed as well, and what you're left with is a liquid with about 4% lactose, which is the sugar.
Yeah.
And instead of processing that so they can dump it, they have borrowed technology from the Irish, of all people. Yeah. I think it was developed in the 70s. And for quite a long time now, they've been processing that that whey into ethanol through fermentation and distillation.
And then they sell it. Because they don't need that, right?
No, they don't. It's so it was a waste stream, and it was a pretty difficult to. By the sounds of it, it was difficult to get rid of. It was a freshwater pollutant. It just sucked the oxygen out of the out of the fresh water, and so converting it into something that you can sell just makes a lot of sense, right? So the ethanol is used not just for drinking, but I believe it's used for makeups and industrial purposes, cleaning products and things. Yeah. So
for the lay person, is it easy to taste the difference in an ethanol based spirit versus something you've taken from a stone mill?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it depends how you consume your products. It depends how you consume your gin or vodka. I can certainly taste it. And I guess if you're a bit of a connoisseur, you would already know that if you have a potato vodka, is going to taste way different to a wheat vodka.
Yeah, of course.
You'll be able to perceive a barley vodka. So it adds to the whole, the whole selection that you can choose from. And you could say that's a good thing. I mean, it's just another variety of product you can choose from. But I can taste the difference for sure.
So for you then, it's really like it's a total sort of holistic, organic approach that you're taking here, right? It's a real. You're not just saying, right, well, I'll bang out some spirits because I like spirits. What's the cheapest, quickest, and easiest way to do that?
That's right. I want to be part of the story.
Yeah,
I want to be part of. I want to be able to, without having to, to massage things to say that I'm part of a craft. That's a genuine craft. It is hundreds of years old, and it's producing an authentic product. And like I say, I really enjoy the story. If I'm if I'm honest, I would say why ethanol doesn't have a story.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a story and it doesn't have any character.
Yeah.
And that's okay if you just want to make a product.
Yeah.
But if you want a product with a story, you can't do it that way.
Well, it's funny, isn't it? Because we were talking earlier as we were setting up, and you were just saying there's a whole industry of sort of let's get the whey ethanol and we'll just do it the quickest and most efficient way possible and we'll sell the stuff.
I think what it's done is it's lowered the barrier to entry, right? So if you want to make whiskey anywhere, you are going to have to, learn how to. First of all, you need a source of the grain. Then you need to learn how to, mash and ferment, and then distill a product with a character that people find appealing.
Yeah.
That is like there's a lot of knowledge that goes into that. There's an insane amount of time. So the barrier to entry is really high on the technical side. Plus, you've got a huge runway for any financial sort of gain because you've got to put it away for so long. And to be honest, it used to be pretty well the same for gin and vodka as well. All right, you had to you didn't have to put it in a barrel, but you did have to learn how to extract a sugar from a substrate of some sort, and some would just go directly to sugar, like cane sugar, and just add yeast to cane sugar wash.
Yeah.
But again, that produced a flavour that was it was obvious where it comes from. So the barrier to entry has been reduced because now you can just buy an IBC full of ethanol. You can just add water and you've got a vodka, or you can put it once through the still and you'll make a gin and you can sell the gin. So it becomes a lot easier with that resource.
It's quite amazing. Jamie and I have been talking over the last couple of days, actually. I've been staying at his place, mooching off him for free. But we've been talking about the importance of sort of that connection to things and the hands-on approach to living life. And it seems to me that so you're milling and everything, you're doing the whole process. Like, did you have to learn that, or like?
Oh, yeah.
In trial and error, were there a few?
Yeah, no, there were a lot of tears. Yeah. there were a lot of times where things thrown at walls and things. Because you put a lot into it, and eventually you'll come across something you haven't learned, and if you're lucky, it'll be a cheap lesson. But often it's going to be. It's going to cost you time or some some money. So the only thing, I do what everybody else who is learning something does, who's really passionate about it. You just every spare moment you are just in something. You're learning it from someone. You're consuming. I don't know whether it's YouTube or whether or not it's books or that's what you're doing. So
because I know that you and I have talked about having your own small business, and being kind of your own boss, I guess.
Yeah.
What's is that the good secondary benefit, like by getting your distill set up and it's just out of the love of whiskey or the love of gin, and secondary to that, it might actually create a way of employment, or was your first thought, I just want to get off the grid, I want to get out of this, what can I do? What's my side hustle and where am I going?
I was thinking about that, and to be honest, the distillery wouldn't be the first. Like if your whole thing was we're going to start a business, and then you're gonna be able to support yourself, this wouldn't have been the first choice.
No,
it wouldn't be the obvious first choice because it's a super competitive market in a very small country, and so you immediately got a big battle on your hands, right? I mean, this is the odds of making it quick buck are basically zero, and also I have to say there's a lot of really great distilleries in New Zealand. We've Scape Grace, Thompson, Pocono now.
Pocono's good. I was gifted a bottle recently.
Just fantastic.
And it's nice, very nice.
Yeah, and the whiskey scene in New Zealand is just doing it right. I couldn't even name a whiskey distillery in New Zealand that seems a little bit out of their depth or not producing any good product. They're just really leaning into the quality of things. They may be small, but their product's fantastic.
Is that why the cost factor is a bit more, it's a bit higher here in New Zealand. Do you think? Like it's interesting because I look at Scotch whiskey and I think in theory it should be more because you're bringing it all the way over here. But our New Zealand whiskies, generally speaking, are often considerably higher.
Yeah, I think maybe scale. Definitely the equipment's a lot more expensive in New Zealand. Professional services like welders and electricians and builders, they cost a lot more. The tax structure is the other big thing. In a lot of other countries, you have, if you produce less than 1,000 litres or 10,000 litres or 100,000 litres a year, you're going to get a tax break, whereas there's no such thing in New Zealand. So if you produce a small amount, your excise tax is the same as everyone.
I was going to ask that as a tax paying and collecting citizen. How
Are you
much?
collecting tax?
I get working for Fairness, mate.
Of course, yeah.
What what am I making off your bottles? Is it a state secret?
What are you making?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I don't know what your share of the excise tax is, but the excise tax is about $67 a litre at the moment. Yeah.
It's huge.
That's massive, isn't it?
So that's pure ethanol.
67, did you say?
Yeah.
Per litre of pure ethanol.
I think that's right. It's in the 63, 67, something like that.
The tax man cometh.
Yeah. Look, and it's and there's been plenty of organisations in New Zealand that have petitioned to give craft distillers a tax break, but so far,
because what's the history of that? Why is alcohol taxed so heavily?
It's a social harm, I guess.
Yeah,
that's what basically it is.
It's a tool for behaviour modification, really. At the end of the
That's
day,
exactly it. Yeah. So, and at the rate at which alcohol is consumed in New Zealand, you'd have to say, why would you change it? Because we already drink quite heavily.
Yeah, and I guess it favours the big boys, right? Because they can absorb it.
Absolutely, yeah. So someone like, so Johnny Walker, they don't have to make as much per bottle as I have to make because my batches are so small. I watched a was a podcast or was it YouTube? They had a Jameson distillery tour, and it was something like 100,000 bottles worth of whiskey are just evaporated every day from the Jameson warehouses.
That's not Angel Share. What
that
are
is Angel
about?
Share.
Angel Share.
That is Angel Share.
Far out.
So they're
100,000. Oh,
Does the taxman get part of that?
No. Well, no. But that's like you're talking about a scale of enterprise which is just you can't even imagine the amount of because when you think about it, Jameson is in every bar all over the world. So you've got to be making a lot of whiskey, right?
Yeah.
It's
funny because there's the history of Scotch whiskey in particular. Like traditionally, there was whole industries that were contained within those distilleries. Your welders were there. Your coopers, who did the barreling. It was everyone was there.
Yeah.
And you can see how a town would be sustained.
Oh, you
by
definitely
a
could.
distillery.
Yeah, and there are still, and that is still the case in Scotland and elsewhere because. Distilleries, they're agrarian in nature. That's, you need farmers to grow the grain and, and if you go right back through the supply chain, someone's going to make all those barrels. And I find it insane that, the oak forests of North America can supply that much oak for all those barrels. But that's what it is.
Well, it's like that's why the sherry cask is a bit different, right, in price because those casks are a bit harder to get a hold of. The sherry cask, they don't like to release them out of Spain. The actual official sherry regions are,
Yeah, and maybe they just use them again and again.
Yeah, they do.
And so it's hard to get. I mean, ex-bourbon is probably the most common barrel for that reason is because the bourbon industry in the States, you're only allowed to use a barrel once.
That's right.
So... Yeah. Once it's used, it's got to go somewhere.
Yes,
so it goes to Scotland.
Well, aside from obviously the spirit base, that you're using that's different.
Yeah.
I guess can with a gin, can you experiment with botanicals to create your own unique flavour profile? Like whiskey, you can, they have a flavour profile.
You can, and I thought about doing that, and no, I just decided no because my focus is the spirit.
Yeah.
So my spirit already has plenty of character. It's the wheat sweetness.
Yeah.
There's maltiness there. It kind of does remind you of your neighbour when you drink it. It's because it has that, those flavours coming through. So I didn't want to hide all of that in a lot of botanicals. And I don't know, that wasn't, that's not playing to my strength. I mean, if you want to go foraging in the bush for an obscure herb to put in gin, I guarantee what will happen is someone who likes gin will drink it and think, that's nice gin, except for that flavour, that whatever that is. Because
what's that fennel in there?
Yeah, that's right. Because gin has to function as gin, right?
Yeah.
What you have to remember is gin has to work in a gin and tonic. It has to work in the cocktails that people know, and
so
it
if
has
it's
a
too
flavor
dominant,
like if you go and put a whole pile of herbs in, and all of a sudden all you can taste is dill, then it's like, okay, well now it's a whole different thing. Yeah, okay, it technically has juniper in it, but the characteristics of gin is you need the resinous base of juniper, you need that balance with your citrus, you need a perfumey herb, and you need an earthy herb.
Yeah.
Right, and if all those four things together will make a good gin. And the base ingredients, which is your coriander, juniper berries, a citrus of some sort, maybe some angelica and some licorice, that really is 90% of all gins.
So
right?
don't go queering the pitch by mucking around too much.
Yeah,
Just
well, I
stick
mean,
to
and
the basics.
plenty of people do, and they have special releases and things. But I'm definitely not going to do. I'll do currently I do a classic gin, which has those classic ingredients in it, those classic botanicals, so people just know what they're getting with a little bit extra, which is the spirit that I produce myself. And I'll do my version of a pink gin, which is more of a fruity gin. Yeah. But other than that, probably not a lot else. I'll go and do something else.
You are looking at doing a special run
and a Damson. So it's a liqueur. So look,
even though it's called a Damson gin, it's really a liqueur.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. I mean, it's just semantics, really. But so a Damson gin will be a real big cornerstone. And I'm busy trying to plant an orchard because I've got that much faith in it. So every winter, more trees go in the ground, and eventually there'll be heaps.
Because Damson plum, like vodka, for example, that's really taken off in New Zealand. It's quite interesting.
Yeah. And there aren't many Damson plums. So, there's a real supply constraint there. I think the biggest orchard in New Zealand only has 200 trees.
Really?
And it's like, well, and it was in the Hawke's Bay, so I got hit with a hurricane as well. So it was real supply constraint. It still is the same. I mean, the Damson grown throughout the whole country, but there's not a huge amount because they're not eating plums, right? So you can't. They're tiny little plums about the size of a large grape, and they are sour. Yeah. Which is perfect for gin because gin loves citrus, and so you pair your sour plum with gin, just absolutely delicious.
I love that about humanity. Like you come across something that's gross, and you're like, "But we can do something with this."
Yeah. We could either make it into a tasty preserve or alcoholic beverage.
Consume it. Yeah. It's quite interesting. There is something. Yeah, there's something. I don't know. There's something about it. I mean, one way to look at alcohol is to you're just drinking purely for the alcoholic outcome. That's it. I'm trying to numb my pain.
Yeah.
The other way is to recognise there's a real craft here, and like one of my personal rules I have is if the moment I'm not drinking for taste is the moment I need to stop and say, what am I doing here?
I think the medicinal properties of alcohol should not be completely swept off the table.
Yeah, sure. But that's different again, though, isn't it? You're not trying to numb your pain.
No. But I think numbing pain is probably like at the high level of what I'm talking about. So obviously, if you're going through like real distress, alcohol is not what you should be having. Yeah, definitely not. And alcohol.
Jamie's not sure over this.
And alcohol. But what I would say,
I will say though, if a spew bug comes into my house, then I'm sipping.
He told me this theory.
24 hours a day.
just dropping it.
Yeah.
No, but what I would say is alcohol is a disassociate. And if you have the willpower, if you're on top of it and you can control, yourself, I think there is absolutely nothing wrong with, everyone's got problems in life, you've got constant load on you. If you have a little alcohol, you never forget about your problems, but it does just turn the noise down on just a tad. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I mean, as long as there's not a dependency, I think it gives you a little break. It's like a little holiday.
Well, can I say
Holiday from your problems.
Depends how often you're going on holiday, I suppose.
No, and this is all part. This is all
every
part
morning I go on holiday before work.
No, and I'm not advocating this across the board. And I probably would preface what I just said with the whole: if you don't have mastery of alcohol, of any intoxicating substance, then you're just going to be a victim of it. So I'm not advocating that at all. And there's responsible ways to enjoy it. But if you're on a Friday night, you've worked hard all week, and you'd like to not just sit there in all of your issues, a few drams will turn the noise down on them a bit.
Send your complaints to look, here's the thing. There's a great statement in the Jewish and Christian scriptures. In the Book of Proverbs. The sayings of King Lemuel. Give wine and beer to the poor to ease their sorrows.
This is what I'm talking about. It's even in the scripture.
Fen and Field, scripturally
appropriate. Region for the poor.
What about you, Jamie? You're on a whiskey journey, aren't you? You've started.
No, yes and no. I'm not a big drinker. I probably started with quite an emotional response, and not like not emotional, an emotive is probably the better word. Having really loved Band of Brothers. Yeah. And watching the search for VAT 69.
I remember that.
I thought, what is VAT 69? And that was probably years ago. When it first came, I watched that and I was like, I got to try this VAT 69.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be very cheap whiskey that you could get in New Zealand.
Yeah. Blended. Sell it by the litre.
Yeah.
Not even 700 ml.
And obviously, like reading the story of it.
Yeah.
So there is a story, but they've never really, like that VAT 69 was the one. And then they've always tried to capture that same taste again, but they've never quite done it.
No.
But that's still, it's there, it's got its name, and people still drink it, which I think is kind of interesting. So, yeah, that's how I kind of started, but it was mostly because, this idea of, brotherhood and, I don't know, what for something in the Band of Brothers I loved, and so I'd have one of those each night and think of the hero in me. And
what's his name? Nixon? Was it Nixon?
Was it Nixon?
Nixon?
The funny story is did I tell you this the other night? He was one of the first to actually get into Hitler's, when they went up to the nest. Eagle's Nest, yeah. And he raided all of the alcohol supplies.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And he just took off with them.
Yeah.
And there's this famous photo of him lying in his bunk, consuming really expensive wines and champagnes. Apparently, I think it was the British when they got there, or the French, whoever got there second.
Yeah.
Said, Hitler's got rubbish supplies. There's nothing. He had all the good stuff. He just took off with it and spent 3 days drinking it. Apparently.
He became a teetotaler in there, right?
I think you're right.
Yeah, I think he met a woman and she said no more or whatever.
Yeah, could buy VAT 69.
Another one bites the dust.
Yeah. Well,
VAT 69 though is what did you think of that VAT 69? Because that was your first whiskey.
Yeah, look, it was the first time getting into whiskey, so there was nothing to really compare it to except your initial Bernie.
You moved up because you've got a couple of nice. You got a Talaska sitting on your shelf at the moment, and
from there I forget. There seemed to me to be, whether it's just the age that I was in or there was a little renaissance in whiskey. It seemed that people around were suddenly saying, "Hey, have you tried this whiskey? Or do you like smoky? Do you like peaty? Do you like whatever it is?" And so there was kind of a little, call it a movement, if you like. And but I mean, it's an expensive hobby, and so I'm like,
it can be,
I would restrict myself quite a lot to either gifts. I couldn't tell you the last time I bought a whiskey. So it's gifts or birthdays. If somebody says, "What can I get you?" I might say, "Yeah, whiskey would be great."
Yeah,
and I'm generally happy with whatever the whiskey is. I'm not particularly fussy. So I wouldn't say I've got a great taste. Like that's very much developing. When somebody says I can taste, plasters, a lot of the time I can't
taste leather. Can you taste leather?
Can you
Can
taste
you
leather?
taste
What'd you
banana
say? You
cake?
can't. Yeah, I was going to say banana
Banana
cake.
cake,
Yeah. So yeah, for me, it's it's a slow story for me in terms of just a little bit here and there and enjoying what I can.
What about you, Sam? Do you have I think about the other night actually I was with someone who, and I didn't pay for this thankfully, but they'd been gifted and they had a bottle of whiskey that's worth about $700, and it was nice, but I'm thinking, is it really $700? And you can go upwards, well and truly upwards of that.
You can, yeah.
And I'm thinking, is a $2,000-3,000 plus bottle of whiskey really worth that?
I think you'll buy at that stage. You suffer from the laws of diminishing returns, right?
Yeah.
So
supply and demand.
I really think that $100, $150 whiskey is going to compete with any $7,000 whiskey, and the irony is, of course, that a lot of those really expensive whiskies have higher and higher age statements, and it depends what you like. Like I've probably drunk. I know how many whiskies I've drunk. I've just crested 100 different whiskies.
I have, yeah.
Yeah. And because I'm a nerd, I've written them all down. And I would have to say that the higher the age statement, the more boring it gets.
Yeah.
So I started my really getting into whiskey when a friend of mine, just to show how great whiskey could be, I tasted an Ardbeg 10.
Lovely.
And it's a bit of a rough drop, right?
Mm.
Like it's not everyone. That's not an approachable whiskey.
No.
But that's
you start with
a
a frog if you're going to try someone who's new to smoking, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and so so Ardbeg 10, and then you go through 100 whiskies, and at the end of it, you're like, that's still my favorite. I mean, I still like the more challenging whiskies. They're not pretty. They've got intense, smoky, peaty flavors, which a lot of people find off-putting. But that's just what you like. So and if I bought an Ardbeg Trebarn, so what's that? Is that an 18-year-old or a 19-year-old or something like that? I'm almost certain that I'd pay you $500 for this bottle of whiskey. I'm almost certain that I'd still just prefer the 10, because with age it loses all of the edge, all of the things that I like.
Well, it's also too, as I understand it, once you get to around 30 to 35 years, that's it anyway. You're not really getting, like if you had a 40-year-old, as I understand it, you're not really getting much of a flavour advantage there anyway.
No, I don't think so.
Well, the one I had the other night was 29 years old, and it was nice. There was a bit, normally you get sort of 3 waves with a good whiskey, front, mid, and back. This one had about 5, 6, and it was interesting.
Okay,
but still, I don't think $700.
I think the absolute most I've heard of in a cask is about 50 years. Yeah, 50 or 60. Yeah, and the problem with a Scotch aging in Scotland is it's dropping proof every year. Yeah. So the Scots will put the whiskey in barrels at a high proof, so it'll go in at 67% barrel entry, and then after 50 years, you have to, like I think in this particular example, they had to bottle it because if they'd left it for another year, it dropped below 40%, and it wouldn't be whiskey anymore. Can't sell this. So it had gone from 67, 70%, dropped all the way down to 40. And you're picking up a lot of interesting wood flavors and the other chemical process of maturation and aging. But by the time it gets I would not prefer a 40% whiskey at 40%. I think that's probably too low. No, 40% for me now is just generally, there are exceptions, but generally the flavors are just dull. Too muted. Yeah. Too muted. The higher ABV gives you more flavour.
How'd you get into it?
Well, on my 40th, which is, it will be 10 years at the end of this year ago, I was gifted a whole lot of bottles of whiskey. and like a Lefroy, a Talisker. There was about Glenmorangie 10. And I'd never had these before, and I'd seen them, never had them.
Yeah.
People just thought, what do you get a guy when he turns 40? And so whiskey seemed to be the thing. Yeah.
Perfect.
And my experience of whiskey had been heavy spirit forward, cheap Jack Daniels.
Yeah.
You'd numb it with Coke, and that was it, And
Yeah.
I thought, well, that's what whiskey is.
Yeah.
And I think the Talisker was like, this is lovely. The Lefroy 10 was amazing. It was like, wow. That became my favourite, actually.
Yeah.
And then the Glenmorangie is like, oh, you can have sort of a fruity type thing that's different. And
It is very fruity.
what I realised is there's flavours here beyond just spirit burn.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that put me on a journey. And then, of course, expense, that's an issue. So I began to get creative and figure out ways. So I let it be known. If people would say to me, when I go and do speaking engagements, they want to buy you a gift, I'd say, well, get me vouchers for this whiskey place or a bottle of whiskey. And birthdays and Christmas now, people know to do that. And I figured out things like the AirPoint stores. You can use AirPoints to buy whiskies. It's not a great selection, but hey, I can get an hour and 10 without paying for it. Things like that. So that became the way of just getting creative about it and keeping an eye out on. I've got a couple of online suppliers that I use that are consistently cheaper, and I watch their sales. And if I save up a bit of the old folding cash money, and there's a good sale, I got an Big 10 in the Black Friday for about $80 or something, which is no freight. And $80.
That's great.
I was like, okay, that's really good,
And so everything you've said is very Scotch. What about your bourbons?
I'm not a big bourbon drinker, but the fact that
But good bourbon?
Yeah, what have I had? I'm just trying to think what I've had. I've had a couple, I can't remember. Like, I'm not a big bourbon guy, but I'm really interested in actually trying that journey.
Yeah.
Because I've
Bourbon is
heard
very
like
different.
Woodford Reserve, there's some nice stuff out there apparently if you get the right.
Yep. Elijah Craig.
Craig.
Yeah.
Apparently Buffalo Trace is a very standard entry level sort of thing. Just
So Buffalo Trace would be, definitely solid.
Your wife's
bourbon.
into Elijah Craig, isn't she? Is that right?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, my wife doesn't drink spirits, but
Yeah.
she had some Elijah Craig, and it's like, oh, this is very nice. And it's like, because bourbon, typically American, is very candy. It's
sweeter.
It's very sweet, very thick. But I mean, if you ever look at all the rules that govern how it's made, it's fascinating that these things which are effectively the same, they're both whiskies, they're both distilled, but because of what they are distilled from, and because of the rules governing how they should be distilled and at what proof they can enter the barrel and all of that sort of stuff, and the climate in which they're aged, a completely different product. So bourbon is, bourbon is.
What would be
a
good bourbon to kick off with if you're interested in having a go at a good bourbon?
I guess Buffalo Trace is a good one.
And not too expensive.
This is what I'm thinking. A good cheaper bourbon would definitely be a Wild Turkey 101.
Yeah.
So that's the 101 proof.
Yeah.
So
for those who don't know, ABV, it's the proof is double, isn't it?
Yeah.
So 100 proof is 50% ABV.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So and then it just goes up. I mean, New Zealand bourbon is so our Scotch prices in New Zealand are good.
Yeah.
They're actually fairly comparable even, around the world. And in some cases, our Scotch is cheaper than you can get it in the States.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. Like we can buy a
Even with the tax.
Oh yeah. We can buy a Johnny Walker Blue for cheaper than you can get it in the States. Pretty sure last time I checked. But bourbon's completely obviously flipped. So you can buy, like in the States, you can buy a really great $30 bourbon. Whereas here, that same bourbon would cost you $100.
Yeah.
So
if I was going the other way, like I had a bourbon drinker who said, I want to start a Scotch journey, I'd probably say try the Aaron 10. Because that's they'd probably for a bourbon drinker, they go, oh, this is kind of sweet and nice. And,
or Glenmorangie though, because
Glenmorangie.
That's so
the Brook
fruity.
Laddie 8, Classic 8, that'd be another one, I think.
So fruity.
Yeah. Anything that's sort of a bit sweeter that gives them.
Yeah.
Good
But
entry.
immediately a bourbon drinker would be struck with how, bourbon's just so thick. and sweet.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and
There's a viscousness there, isn't there?
because corn distillate is so oily.
Yeah.
The rules for Scotch are that the distillate coming off the still can't be any higher than 94.8%.
Yeah.
So 94.8, that's really high. I mean, azeotrope is 95.6.
Yeah.
So you're very close to the highest you can possibly distill anything.
Yeah.
Whereas bourbon, and I'd have to double check, but I'm pretty sure bourbon is way down at 180 proof.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
So huge difference.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a fascinating.
160 proof, 80%. I think. Yeah, 80%.
Yeah. So that,
160.
and it's it's the art of it, isn't it? There's something. You're right. In theory, it's
So you're putting a lot more oil and water and other things into the barrel, which have a different flavor profile than that ethanol that's gone in there.
I don't know. I mean, it'd be interesting to know now where they're at. But apparently, at one point, the Mormons in America were the third biggest sort of corporate financial power, very quietly, because of the corn production that they.
Is that right?
Yeah, and then there was that. Remember that they were trying to create corn-based fuel for airplanes at one point.
Right. Yeah,
I don't think that's gone much further, but
I don't think so. I think it's because it just has a greater value for food.
Yeah. I want to eat it or drink it.
Eat it or drink it.
Yeah.
Rather than
Yeah, it's fascinating, eh?
It is. And so they're very when you get into the bourbon side of things, you can, and you're already well versed in Scotch. There's so many differences. I think one of the main differences, which I thought was fascinating, is bourbon distilleries have an insanely high regard for yeast.
Yeah, okay.
So their yeast is so important to them. So they'll have a strain which they've had the entire time.
Yeah,
really?
So
it's like a trade secret almost.
Yeah,
like Fort
it is.
Knox.
It is.
Know?
It's like a bread.
Yeah. So Jimmy
Of
Russell.
agree.
So the Jimmy Russell who has run Wild Turkey forever, he has a backup yeast in his fridge at home, because
Just in case.
something happens to the strain.
Yeah.
That
It's
they
like
can.
bakers that split their dough three ways. Like they've gone, in the baker, at home, and somewhere else, just in case.
Well, it's part of their story, right? Too.
It is. But Scotch, it's like, well, what yeast do you use? I don't know. We just order off a catalogue. It's M1. Someone makes it.
interesting,
Someone
actually.
makes it, and it turns up in a truck. It's actually sitting over there in the cleaning cupboard.
But is that because in the Scotch it's just burnt out? It's all eaten, it's gone?
I just don't think that they don't regard that as the thing that brings the flavour. Which, they can't use any old yeast, so it is M1. So there is a strain that many producers will make, AM1 or M1, and to make their Scotch. But they would say that it's the other, the vast majority is the maturation. So, we're going to pull this spirit. It's going to be barley, so it's all the barley's the same, but it's going to be where is that whiskey going to be for the 10 years? Is it going to be sitting in a shed that's right by the ocean, or is it going to be in a highland shed somewhere? Is it going to be
Because how long's a bourbon in for?
Well, that's the thing. There probably wouldn't be many good 10-year-old bourbons, because after 10 years, that bourbon, because in North America, the proof actually increases. So it goes the exact opposite way to Scotch. So bourbon goes in low and it comes out high.
Because of the sugars.
Well, people don't really know. I think one theory was that because it's hotter in the
humidity,
States,
I think, is a factor.
I
Isn't
think
it?
that's what it is. Yeah. So I think it's the temperature and humidity. So Scotch ABV drops, American bourbon increases.
Really?
So you can end up, you put your bourbon in a barrel at 60%, and barrel proof could be 85.
Like, here's an interesting one for you. Like, at the moment, you have like the master distillers, like particularly the big brands. You know, Chivas Regal. They have, I think it's a female, isn't it, in charge of the 12-year-old that they've got. I can't remember her name, but it's like her job is to make sure that profile is consistent. You know, vanilla, honey, nutmeg. It's got to be that thing, otherwise you can't sell it. And so, master distillers, you know, they have a job to do, but there's this encroaching AI in our world. Surely AI is going to start encroaching. Because the algorithm, in a sense, could.
Yeah, I think it's not the distillers. I think it's the blenders who.
Yes, blenders.
So it's apologies. And I think you're right. I think probably if you could somehow teach AI to sense the components of a whiskey, and train it.
Yeah,
it would one day. Yeah, you're going to get to a point where you will just put all of the warehouses barrels samples into the system.
Yeah,
and it would split it. It would send out the right combinations. Wow. Because that's the part that you can't go to school for.
No,
I mean, some people have amazing palates, and you know, it's what you're born with. I mean, you can train to interpret what you're tasting, and there are certain techniques that you can do to so that you don't burn your palate out, and you can discern certain tastes and how you take the spirit in, but really your ability to make sense of what your tongue's telling your brain, a lot of that's just what you're born with, and so some people can do that.
Some people apparently just have the gift, right?
They do, and then those people go to they're known in the industry, and they'll go to all the distilleries and they'll do their blending for them.
Yeah.
So talk about that, because, the fashionable thing is to have a single malt, but that wasn't always the case. Blend was having something that's...
For most of the history of whiskey, it wasn't the case. And it's still the biggest sold is blended still.
Yeah. I mean, so those huge distilleries... Bell's, Chivas, Johnny Walker, they all started as grocers. So there was a John Walker grocery, grocer, who you went to get all your stuff from, and they bought whiskey, and they made a house brand. So you
blended it. Essentially,
they
bought what they wanted. Okay.
Yeah, and they put their label on it.
Got it.
And so you were buying John Walker whiskey.
Blend.
Or Chivas Brothers whiskey,
and
then they got a bit of a taste for it, and so blends was the thing for a very long time.
I think that grocers in New Zealand should recapture this.
Foursquare.
Yeah. You go in and you choose. They've just got a blend that you really like. You're like, I like that blend, Pirongia blend.
The funny thing is, that if it had stayed that way, Scotch would be gone.
Absolutely. There would be no consistency. You couldn't sell a bottle in, say, New Zealand that tasted the same as what you bought it for, say, 6 months later, the new batch. There'd be no consistency, surely.
Well, I mean, I think the main thing is the single malt was just such a home run on the marketing front. So I think it started with Chivas or Johnny Walker. They did the age statement.
Yeah.
And that started they did a 12-year, and that started the sort of premiumization of whiskey.
Yeah.
And then single malt just hit that straight out the park.
Yeah.
So who was it? It was Glenfiddich. Glenfiddich released I think Glenfiddich, I don't know who started it, but Glenfiddich started as a single malt distillery and or brand. And then that's what kicked the whole thing off.
Yeah.
And the marketing in that was just really great. The premiumization of whiskey was really was really.
It's quite fascinating, isn't it? How it did open up a whole new way of approaching whiskey.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of times where whiskey could have just completely disappeared.
Yeah.
So if you think about how did this drink from Scotland and Ireland, let's face it, Irish whiskey is different, but
triple distilled, smoother, slightly different.
But how did that make it onto the world stage? Like what things actually had to happen to get it there? And there was just there's a lot of really just sheer luck, So I think when Scotch whiskey first got into London, the only reason it was able to get into London was because phylloxera from the US had made its way to France and had completely decimated the vineyards. Because if you were a well-to-do London chap, the drink that you would drink was a brandy and soda.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
So phylloxera turns up in the late 1800s, and basically French vineyards are wiped out for 20 years.
Yeah.
Those guys needed to find another drink.
Yeah.
So what was there to drink? So it turned out they switched from brandy and soda to Scotch and soda, so it went into England, and then later. It was only, the foothold in the US was only because World War II.
Yeah.
Because the GIs went to Europe and they loved this Scotch stuff. And they bought it. And
as part of the marketing, just that psychology of like blended, just something that's pure sounds like it's better.
Yeah.
Single, pure.
Well,
better.
It's changing.
Blended
But
sounds like kind of
100%. It is the snootiness of the whiskey people, and that whole category played to it, and it was people just lapped it up.
It was like an elite. And it's funny, you can see it even now.
You can.
I was telling someone recently about McClellan 12-year-old, classic example. McClellan appears in the James Bond films. It's on all the top British dramas. So people go, that must be a really... And they charge premium prices.
Like that 69. Where's that not like
well,
shelf?
Well, David, that's... Okay, Jamie, calm down a bit, son. But,
is that a blend?
But I'll give you an example. McClellan 12, sherry-influenced whiskey.
Yeah.
It's nice. But a Tamdhu 12, I think, is nicer. And a Tamdhu 15 is even nicer, also sherry influenced, but cheaper. $20, $30 a bottle cheaper. But it's not, James Bond isn't drinking Tamdhu.
Yeah,
James Bond isn't drinking it.
Yeah,
that's exactly it. Yeah. But I think it's changing now. So you are getting blends, and people, like whiskey people, know that the single malt has flavour limiting rules. And yes, it's set a benchmark for quality, which we all appreciate.
Yeah.
But now it turns out you can do away with some of those rules and still have quality.
Yeah.
So Compass Box is probably
Compass
the
Box is
absolute
great,
best example of that. So
do you have a favourite of theirs?
No, I don't. I'll have to consult my list.
Yeah. Pete Monster's pretty good.
But Compass Box is all blended Scotch, and they just do fun labels. They do really good blends, and the blenders obviously know their stuff. They're producing high quality, and malt whiskey will be a component of some of their blends.
Yeah,
but equally they won't turn their nose up at a column still. Whiskey or doesn't matter.
See, I went through a phase where I was like, oh no, I would never drink blended. No, I've moved beyond.
Yes,
that. But then I discovered McLean's Nose, phenomenal, 70% malted. Often what happens with blended, they went through a period where they were filling it with cheaper grain based.
Yes, that's right. They were making it cheaper,
and that was a way of cheating the system, And but this is 70% single malts, and it's just beautiful. It is and very very affordable for what it is.
Yeah.
And then what else was it that I just Johnny Walker, of all that, like I got gifted a bottle of blue, and that's about $270.
It is, yeah,
but it's overrated. The green is for 15-year-old single malts, like Talaskas in there, Kalilas in there. I can't remember what the other two are from memory, but that is at $80 a bottle is better than the $270 one, and you realise, that's a blended whiskey, and it's beautiful. It's
But blue has been on a lot of sitcoms.
Yeah,
it's been on a lot of movies. There's a bottle of blue somewhere, and it stands out. And it's the exact same thing.
It is pure marketing.
It's
that is
good.
a great example of pure marketing.
Yeah.
Like I've still got a bit left in the bottle at home, and I think it's okay, but it's not.
Yeah,
it's definitely not better than the 15-year-old.
No,
green.
No, and so blends they did really cheap out. Like they'd put sorghum distillate in there, and they'd find out what grain has the highest starch content. Let's just mash that and chuck that through the column. Yeah. And it would be coming out at sort of bang on 94.8, and then it would go. So okay. So I think the bottom line is the real interesting whiskey is probably going to be high quality whiskey without some of those flavor limiting rules, and that's why I think New Zealand, and I don't know who put it together, but New Zealand has an unofficial standard for single malt.
Yeah.
And what it does is it's taken the rule for must be barley, and it's changed that to can be any malted grain, but it has to be specified on the bottle. And they've borrowed what was called the Irish whiskey loophole, which is it has to be in a wooden cask, but it doesn't say oak.
Yeah.
Right. Now, admittedly, we didn't happen across oak by accident. Oak is just unbelievably suitable for barrels, really tight grain. And the great thing about it is you don't poison yourself when you drink from the barrel, right? And, some wood will do that.
Yeah.
Right. So, there's, Jameson's experimenting with chestnut barrels and, and we can experiment with some, in New Zealand, we could experiment with some native timber. We could put...
that's the irony, right? Like this is where single malts, I think it's quite interesting here. It's come around like an almost full circle now. Like, Glenmorangie, as it Nectar d'Or is Sauternes. French really sort of dessert sweet wine cask they finish in, and it's beautiful.
It is.
And you got these guys, they're trying all sorts of cask types to give you something.
But that's basically they've taken Nectar d'Or, they've taken a dessert wine. And they've so that's just super rich and sweet. They've just poured whiskey in after it, which is great. And so I don't, I think if you, not all of those new woods are going to be home runs. Like some of them will just be terrible.
Yeah. Jameson's had they had all their stout casks, and I was like, no, it's still just Jameson's. For me, Black Barrel's the only one that I.
Right. Yeah. That's probably because you're a malt whiskey guy.
And
so Irish whiskey is always going to miss something. It's going to be thin. Basically, if you're a malt guy, Irish whiskey is going to be thin, right?
Well, even Connemara, which is still the only peated Irish, I think, isn't it? And Connemara, it's just not the same. And it's not just the vegetal peat matter that made up the peat, right? It's just not quite as thick. It's not quite.
No. And peat's not peat. I mean, have you tried the Thompson's peated whiskies?
Not yet.
But Thompson Manuka,
just
absolutely amazingly well done.
Yeah,
but
Scapegrace,
so
Manuka,
different.
Same thing, I think.
So different though, so different. And
it's
so
sweet.
I think, and I think though that is, I mean, it's maybe just me being a Kiwi and I'm used to Manuka, but that is definitely one thing that I think that the world would. Yeah, it's fairly uniquely us. But just works so well. Oh,
like when I had the Scapegrace, I was really surprised by, and it's not, it doesn't have that heavy medicinal thing going on at all.
No, it doesn't have.
It's
iodine.
Sweet. It's almost like a liqueur. Actually,
that's right. It doesn't have plasters.
Yeah, that's a flavor.
It's the iodine. It's the iodine note.
Yeah, that's missing.
That is the plasters note. That is not in New Zealand peat.
Yeah. Well, even in Scotland, right, you have, so the Isle is different. The type of, you have more sort of shrubs that grow there. So you get a vegetal peat that's different from the say, Highland, where they have trees in the peat,
Yeah. Well, and I wonder, I mean, I'm talking about my ass here, but just thinking about it, like oak trees growing in New Zealand are useless. You can't use them for...
I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, they grow too fast and they get what's called the shakes. I'm pretty sure that's the term they use. But you see it, or I've seen it, like say you mill down a board, like the fibres start lifting, like almost feathery.
Right.
It lifts, it's terrible.
Right.
And so you can't use, say for furniture making in New Zealand, you can't use locally grown oak.
Will local oak still...
Burn.
As long
It burns.
It burns.
It's good for firewood.
Real?
As to how long it lasts, I'm not sure, but it twists a lot worse. It's just more unstable as a timber, but it grows a lot slower. In the northern hemisphere, it's a much better. But it would be interesting to use more New Zealand grown trees, which are made for our climate, because you're also making the alcohol in our climate. So I just wonder.
Yeah.
You know, does it, like, it would just be fascinating to really, like you're saying,
Yeah.
explore that, because oak is shit here. You couldn't use it. Sorry,
But-
I used it.
But the interesting woods though, they're all really expensive or protected.
Yeah, I wonder if you could.
Because
you
I'd
could
love to
try-
make was it what's white pine?
Kirkits,
Yeah.
that rots out so fast. It was used for butter. For
Would that be
transporting
similar
butter.
to Chick-a-Peak, you know, and do you think?
Couldn't you make like a head with it, like a barrel head, and just have it? I don't know.
Surely
Like
you
I don't
could.
know. Like there's I guarantee there's a
real-
winery somewhere that's probably put some barrel heads in that are
Yeah.
going to
Yeah.
tear.
It would be
or-
worth having a go, definitely. But I know that it just doesn't have the lasting quality. Saying that, they do flooring with it, but I know that was used for maybe I'm going to get somebody who's going to complain to your thing, but I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure it's
send your
Kirkits that
complaints
was that they used for storing butter. Got sent over like New Zealand butter, and then was shipped
yeah.
to England.
Oh,
I
was
did.
but
I
then
did
the butter
hear-
boxes, they just didn't last.
I did hear that it doesn't have a characteristic is that it doesn't have an odor. Or it
Yeah,
doesn't-
and it grows
doesn't have
in the
resin.
water, so it's a really soft wood. Like it's
Right.
the Kirkitia roots they're in the swamp.
Do you have a flavour
Swamp tree.
profile that you'd like to try and achieve when you get round to whiskey? Have you got any thoughts?
Look,
Or was it just going to be experiment?
Look, this
You go,
is just
"This'll
going to be
work"?
this is going to be that's exactly it. It's the home brewer in me.
Yeah.
There'll be 100 barrels of all different sizes of all different things. And look, I think there's enough people like to try and I can differentiate myself enough in the total space. I think my contribution just to one particular spirit will be much less. Particularly whiskey. Whiskey is look, there's just a lot of people doing it really well.
Yeah.
And so I think you have to think long and hard about what your contribution is going to be.
Yeah.
There's certainly no point copying, which is why I love the Thompson expressions, because they
Yeah.
have really leaned into this is New Zealand whiskey.
Yeah.
And it put a New Zealand spin on it.
Yeah.
And taken some pretty bold, like some of their, offerings are probably more fun than like the most enjoyable whiskey you've had, but others are just home runs. And I just love that sort of risk taking that they've done. I just think that it's probably going to come down to this concept of terroir in
Yeah.
New Zealand.
Yeah.
So it's the old, it's I think it might be a French wine concept where
Yeah, terroir, yeah.
where you have where the land and the climate and the soil are the
Yeah.
things that contribute to a certain particular flavour. And so if we're at it long enough, we're going to end up with a New Zealand whiskey profile, which will just be
It'll be
us.
unique.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of it, right? There's something about that sense of tradition and connectedness and to the land as well. You know what I
That's
mean?
right.
It's not, right, okay, I'll get my cheap ethanol and I'll just add some botanicals I've bought from wherever and, hey, look at what I've got on the market. It's not just a gimmick to try and get people to buy
Yeah.
a product. There's something more here.
I wonder if bourbon would be interesting in New Zealand, like you're
I
saying,
think
you're
it
using
probably
it,
would.
specific strain of yeast, but you'd have to, because, like the cheeses that we get, for example, Camembert and Brie are exactly the same in New Zealand. It's the same yeast, but in France, it's yeast, the two different, Camembert and Brie are from two different places. They're named after the places, and those yeasts are different.
Interesting.
So, they find that yeast in that particular, let's call it a cave in that area,
Yeah.
Yeah.
where that cheese started. In Camembert, it's different.
Yeah.
In New Zealand, it's the same yeast, and it's and so it's labelled Camembert and it's labelled Brie, but it's the same cheese. But we would have different yeasts in New Zealand, different wild yeasts.
Yeah.
It'd be fascinating
Absolutely.
in terms of a bourbon context.
Yeah, some craft brewers are doing that, eh?
Yeah.
The craft brewers in New Zealand that will just go out and just find a yeast.
Interesting.
There was one in Palmerston North. I think it was Palmerston North. They
Dang, I thought I
found
was onto something new.
no, they found yeast. They found yeast in a silage bale. And
really?
And they cultivated it, and they made beer out of it.
Wow.
Because
Did
you
it
just
taste like silage? That's what I
you
was-
mentioned that.
no, I don't. I,
Grass.
no, that's the thing. Like
Silage
it's just
lager.
growing on the silage. It's not of the silage, you know.
Okay,
But still would
obviously
be
it
a
likes-
risky
yeah,
proposition.
that's
But
right.
you definitely, and we've got a company in New Zealand that makes its own yeast. So we've got Frostech in New Zealand, and they're a really cool little company. I don't know a huge amount about them, but they are they fully make their own.
make yeast.
Make yeast, for brewing.
Wow.
So no, we could definitely put something together. I've often thought about what would be the quintessential New Zealand spirit, because Russia has vodka.
Yeah.
The Scots have their whiskey.
Yeah.
America has their bourbon. Mexico has tequila.
Yeah.
Love tequila.
Brandy is France.
Yeah.
So what would be our thing? And
Spades.
well, could it be a kiwi fruit brandy? Could it be, could it be, you take, what is the thing that grows here?
Well, I think
that
you talked about Manuka before. I think that's really, I know that's, you can find Manuka in other parts of the world, but it's, there's something about that is, I think most Kiwis recognise so quickly.
Kiwi fruit, Manuka
honey.
liqueur of some kind.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be great if we had a serious spirit. It's interesting that that not all spirits are serious.
What about, because I just seen about the bourbon, because they use sugar, like a corn base
they
for
just
bourbon.
use corn,
So because the cabbage trees traditionally, I'm going to try this at home with our cabbage trees, like early Māori used to have basically cabbage trees plantation. We essentially chop a stem off the cabbage tree and you plant it into the ground, like they self-propagate really well. But you want to come back, I think it's like 3 to 6 months later, and a tuber will have grown, a root tuber off the bottom of that that plant, the branch that you pushed in.
starchy tuber.
A starchy tuber, and they would chop that up and dice it and boil it, and it's sugar. And it was basically like, because I'd like to trial it, but it's just very starchy, very sweet.
Really?
Yeah, and they would chew on it. Like once it's boiled,
Yeah.
rendered down a little bit, and then they'd chew these cubes. So
Really?
What
And
for?
it was,
What purpose?
And it was sweet.
it's for sugar, just for the joy of chewing on sugar.
Really?
That's
So
just
no
sweet.
medicinal, nothing.
No, good question. Maybe, probably there was something. I don't know enough of the history just to know that.
So that could be
the
something.
That
cabbage.
could be something you could make that.
Yeah, the cabbage tree plantations or areas were sacred because they wanted to keep growing. Because sugar's addictive. It would have been one of the
Be a
few-
hard marketing task. Cabbage whiskey.
Or cabbage vodka. Look, I mean,
Cabbage
that's the
vodka,
thing.
yeah.
But it's
But you'd find the Māori name for cabbage tree, and then
you could do something. Yeah, you could do something out market with that. It's amazing though how difficult it is to make ethanol from something. You'd think that potatoes were really easy.
Oh, and
they
not.
they don't have a lot of starch in them. It's quite interesting.
we should look
So-
at this
Well,
cabbage
You should
tree
definitely look at
thing.
the cabbage tree. thing.
Kumara.
Yep.
That would be.
I think there was I think someone did give Kumara vodka a go or something.
Yeah.
Pocono. They're very Kumara place, aren't they?
Yeah.
Pocono. Well, they got a whiskey. I'm looking at the time. I'm thinking we might knock this on the head.
Sure.
But Fen and Field. Tell us a little bit about the brand before we do that. You got a hare, is it?
Yeah.
We've got
a
get that
hare.
wrong. A rabbit. It's a hare. It's a hare, bro.
Well, look, I think it was just I just wanted to have a brand that would sort of encapsulate where we were. And so, the hare is a hedgerow animal. We're here in amongst the rolling hills of the Waikato. It seemed like it fit. And Fen is, it's a little bit of a nod to what this place used to be. So it used to be a large swamp area all in the Te Kawa area. And and so the Fen and the Field.
Yeah.
And then I think what really sealed the deal was there was a Tolkien poem with Fen and Field.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, that's it then.
Yeah.
That Middle Earthy type thing.
Well,
going
mate,
around.
you've got the complete
That's it.
marketing package.
That's
there.
it.
Yeah.
I
Brendan
think it was Fen-
found Middle Earth this morning, actually, going out for a walk.
Oh, yeah?
Sort of-
Oh, I
Was that?
couldn't believe it. The trail, it was just the walkway. It was just, I did a couple of hours.
Which one
up.
did you do?
The what's the name of it, Jamie? I can't remember the name of it.
Oh, yeah. See, now
Karam-
you're giving me... No.
The
That's,
Karamu. Isn't it Karamu?
no, it's part of the New Zealand walk.
Yeah, but there's the Karamu walkway, isn't it?
Yeah, Karamu. Yeah, it is.
It's just, So, and what was interesting for
Karambu.
me is my father was born and raised on a farm in Matamata. It's about an hour away from where we were.
Directly
Nice.
over from our driveway, heading up the hill.
Yeah, I see the signs. Yeah.
It was something else. It was mystical.
Really? Great.
So you've got everything here. You've got the total branding package then.
Well, look, just got to make the spirit now. Yeah.
How do people? Because people are going to watch this and they're going to go, "Oh, I want to try some of this." How do they?
Yeah.
how
I
do
would
they get it?
recommend the gin, actually, just as somebody
Nice.
has tried, I would just say it's a good gin.
Were you a gin drinker before?
I love gin. Yeah. I've done it. But
I like
not
to holiday
necessarily
before work.
Not,
Gin and
not necessarily a connoisseur, but it's probably one of the few drinks that I could just drink. Just as a gin. It's it's got a good flavour profile there.
Yeah.
But yeah, mixed whatever. Happy as we got a lime tree and that goes down a treat.
Oh yeah, gin and lime goes together really well.
So, but where do we get a hold of it?
It's available online, and then in stores in the Waikato and Bay Plenty at the moment. Yeah.
It's going to expand around the rest of the New Zealand.
Look, it will. Yeah, it will. We just have to. Yeah, it is a very gradual thing. Like I said before, it's a very flooded market.
Yeah.
There's a lot of competition, and right now there's a lot of competition for every dollar.
Yeah.
It's actually quite a
it's a hard time to be.
Yeah, it is absolutely.
How have you found that? Is it you're small, really small entrepreneurial business owner here? How's that?
Look, it's you have to just I guess take your time. It just accept that these things are going to take a long time to grow and establish, and half of it is just people know who you are.
Yeah.
And then you've constantly got to be telling the story.
Yeah.
This is, and you got to convince people of what you love.
Yeah.
And that's just going to take some time. And I love mashing. I love just fermenting. I love, I get a thrill every time. And as soon as I finish one batch, I'm like, I'm ready to start the next one because I just, so and I think, that will translate into the,
You've got a great story. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, but
there's the country bounces us back as well. Out of it, we're in the thick of that recession at the moment, but
I find
we bounce back at all. Things lift.
I found local people have been really good. The local, people around Tiamutu who, who go to the bottle store there and they see a local brand and it'll be a bit more than their standard, their standard gin, the big name gin, but they seem very willing to give it a go and support local, which is great.
What would your niche be if you had a niche? You just, you say, where do I fit in the New Zealand scene?
Look, I would, gifting gin seems to be a bit of the niche at the moment. But
100%.
But definitely,
that's a good way to introduce it to other people. That's what I find. Because we would buy a few bottles every now and then to go, hey, try this to people who love gin, and they're like, oh, actually, that's...
Gifting has been a thing when they just want to give something with a little bit of a story out of the ordinary. Yeah. But really, I think it is it's the drinker that knows that is not a complete.
Is a vegan.
No, that can be. We welcome vegans.
Yes,
vegans and CrossFitters.
Doesn't want cow juice in their alcohol.
Yeah, people who just appreciate the tradition behind it. Right? Now people that appreciate a bit of craft. Those people are. They tend to be older and they tend to have a little bit more money to spend. So,
wow, long may it continue.
Yep.
Long may it continue.
Exactly. Yep.
And thank you, I guess, Sam too, for taking the time to sit with us on a Friday evening and chat. And,
it's been good.
And Jamie for sitting in third chair, really, or second chair, wasn't it?
Yeah. You'll get Dean back in the coming weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Send your complaints to.
I gave it my best Dean impression.
I tell you, VAT 69 though, funny story. I actually managed to find a set of the VAT 69 glasses in a secondhand store somewhere. I thought I'll buy those because I'll do an episode. Right. I'll get someone who likes Band of Brothers. We'll probably talk about Band of Brothers.
Well, there we go.
Do VAT 69.
You need to find a VAT 69 in the original port bottle.
Yeah, that's the key, isn't it?
Yeah, so that's a cool bottle.
Yeah, that was a cool bottle. And then they went to an ordinary bottle and it was
On that note, that's another episode in the can.
Awesome.
Thanks, chaps.
No problem.
Thanks for that.